Good morning. Sorry about the delay. Today is the 25th, the 25th of Iyar, the 16th of May, and we're going to be looking at the third reading of Parashat Bemidbar. If you're on Zoom, so I'm going to share the screen with you today. Let me just do that. And if you're not on Zoom, I'm going to be putting a link in the comments so that you can see what we are discussing. Let's get this a little bit better here. Okay. So the fourth reading of third reading of Bemidbar discusses the encampment around the tabernacle. And what you see in this picture, this is actually on our site, inner.org. And it's the Hebrew calendar page. From this you can get to all of the months and descriptions that are in this diagram. So what is the diagram we're looking at? It's basically a Star of David, but it has 6 more areas filled out to make it into a hexagon. So there's 6 sides here. And there are 12 areas, and actually one in the middle, the 13th area. So we're talking about how the tribes encamped around the tabernacle. So the tabernacle would be like in the middle here, and we've colored it black and white. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about that later. And that represents the tribe of Levi that we talked about yesterday. And the month of second Adar, and unification. If you remember, everything we talked about Levi yesterday was about its ability, the tribe of Levi, their ability to unify God and man, and to unify between people, unite people, and so on. And that's their real ability, unification. In Hebrew, it doesn't exactly mean unification in this sense, but it's one of the meanings. Now, around the tabernacle, which is in the center, we have the 12 tribes arranged in 3 camps. So it's a little harder to see it here because of this hexagon shape, but let's go over the camps one by one. So the first one we have is the camp of the tribe of Yehuda, which starts here in Nisan, and then Yehuda is with Yisachar and Zebulun. These 3 on this side here. I hope you can see this. Nisan, Iyar, and Sivan. And this is the order of the months also, because each one of the tribes in the order of its encampment is also corresponds to one of the 12 months of the year. So Nisan is the first month, and that's the tribe of Yehuda, and with him in the same camp are Yisachar, who is thought, and Sivan and the tribe of Zebulun, and they are progress. So I don't know if you remember this, but a couple of, I think of maybe about 7 days back, we talked about this progression from faith to thought to progress to moving forward. So that's the first camp, and this camp was on the east side of the encampment. Then we have the next 3 tribes: Reuven, Shimon, and Gad. And they correspond to the 3 months after that, which are Tammuz, Av, and Elul. And in terms of their senses, what they represent and what is their essence, Reuven is sight, like he sounds. The word Reuven literally means to see. Shimon, which is hearing, not so surprising because Shimon literally means to hear. And Gad, which means action. Action is a little bit different than progress, but there is a connection between them. To really get into this, I'll speak in a moment how we study this. So this is the second encampment, and they are to the south. Then we have to the west, we have the tribe of Ephraim, Menashe, and Benjamin. They are together to the west of the tabernacle. They correspond to the months of Tishrei, Cheshvan, and Kislev, what we call the beginning of the year. And their senses, their special essence, Tishrei is the month of touch. Ephraim is related to touch. Cheshvan is the month of smell. Menashe is related to smell. and Kislev is the month of sleep, which is a sense, which many times we explain that sleep really means like the sense of dreaming, the ability to dream properly. Finally, to the north, we have the encampment of Dan, and he includes two other tribes, Asher and Naphtali, and they bring up the end of the year, the last 3 months, Tevet, Shvat, and Adar. Now, another thing you'll notice about this this chart, first of all, the east, south, west, north is not exactly how it is situated in this chart, because it's just, there's all kinds of reasons why it's this way. We can't get into it right now. But one of the things you'll notice is that the color scheme in this chart is actually a spectrum. So we have, in the middle, we have the greens. You'll see the greens here and the yellow. The yellows and the greens go in the middle. And on the two extremes, you have to think of these as two extremes, we have the blue and the red. And because it sort of like circles, it closes on itself, we have the ultraviolet, which are right here, connecting with the infrared, which are here. So this is a very interesting spectrum. You can do this with Photoshop or anything else. It used to be hard to imagine how this was, but nowadays it's very simple. But what we get from this is that each of the months of the year has a color. We're talking about the northern hemisphere. So in the northern hemisphere, the coolest months are Tevet and Shvat, which are basically January and February. So these are the blues. The blues are considered to be the coolest. The hottest months, usually August and September, or maybe July and August. So there are the reds that are here. They're Av and Elul. These are the 2 months. So the colors also relate to the month in terms of the solar year. Another thing you'll see in this chart is that each of the months letter. What is this all about? The Book of Formation explains to us that the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet are divided into 3 groups. There's many ways to divide them, but this is one of the divisions. There are what are called 3 mother letters, Aleph, Mem, and Shin. Can't get into why they're called mother letters right now. There are 7 double letters because they have 2 ways of being pronounced. They're Beged, Kafrat, Bet, Gimel, Dalid, Kaf, Pei, Resh, and Taf. And then we have the 12 simple letters. During the months of the summer, they just follow the order, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tet, and Yud. And then during the winter months, these are the 12 simple letters, because there's only one way to pronounce them. They're Lamed, Nun, Samech, Ayin, Tzadik, and Kuf. This is a basic chart that allows us to interpret the calendar on many, many levels. So the way that the tribes were encamped around the tabernacle is actually the basis for our understanding of the solar year. But not only that, it provides a correspondence for us to connect time with the sefirot also. Because you'll notice in here that each one of these triangles, basically, each one of the camps, each one of the tribes, is also associated with an inner experience of one of the sefirot. So we have here in this order, faith, will, and pleasure are on top. That's really the reason why they're on top, because these are the 3 parts of the crown. So the crown is divided into 3 parts that we call the unknowable head, the head of nothingness, and the elongated head. Those are the Kabbalistic terms. In Chassidus, these are known as the faculties or the experiences of faith, pleasure, and will. After that, we have understanding here and its experience, which is joy, acknowledgement and its experience, which is sincerity, or sometimes simplicity or earnestness, might, gevura, which is or, and kingdom, malchut, which is lowliness, and beauty, tiferet, which is compassion or mercy, and tishrei corresponds to foundation, yesod, and truth. By the way, if all these things also correspond to the bodily systems. So for instance, Tishrei, when we say it's the sense of touch, all the touch that we have is in our skin. That's how we basically feel things, through touch. The whole foundation of the skin as an organ in Chassidus and in Kabbalah is related to the sefirah of foundation. The skin is actually called the crown of foundation, Ateret HaYesod. And you can read more about this in Rav Ginsburg's book, Body, Mind, and Soul. There's a whole description of these. So each one of these also corresponds to a bodily system. Then we have the Cheshvan and the tribe of Menashe. They are Chesed and the inner experience of love. Benjamin who is in Kislev, so he's Netzach, victory and confidence, and bringing up the end. Dan and Asher and Naphtali correspond to wisdom, Chochmah, and pleasure and will, which we said are from the crown. So this gives us a whole map which needs to be studied, and this is just the external, just understanding what each one of these terms means. What does it mean that it's associated with one of the tribes? What does it mean that it's associated with a particular time of the year, the solar year? And then we get into more complex issues that come up. What I'm trying to show is that the way that the Torah organizes the tribes around the tabernacle is one of the most important bases that we have for understanding complex systems in the world, beginning, of course, with time and the year, and then going into the faculties of the psyche, and then going into the body. But another thing that we've been teaching over the years is, if you're familiar a little bit with Myers-Briggs personality types, so they actually correspond to this chart as well, with one small difference, and this is something that we won't have time to explore now. But in Myers-Briggs, the whole idea, whether you're an extrovert or introvert, for instance, so there's no middle, there's only two extremes. And the key to each one of these four camps, which contain 3 tribes each, is that in Judaism there are 3 axes. So there's a left, and there's a right, and there's an actual separate middle, which is not just the middle between the 2 extremes. It's actually something different. So this appears in each one of these encampments that had 3 tribes, and it changes the way that you would do Myers-Briggs, the way that, for instance, Jung would understand the personality types, because you add a third leg, a third dimension, as it were, to each one of these possibilities. So all this needs a lot of description. I just wanted to impress on everyone that this is one of the most important sections of the entire Torah in terms of understanding how to take modern models, modern ways of thinking and time and everything else, and figuring out how to model it according to Torah, and how to analyze it properly and how to understand it. Each one of these things, if you go on inner.org and you click any one of these, so you get, I just clicked Nisan, so you get a lot of explanation. For instance, the month of Nisan according to the Book of Formation, and here it goes over many of the different things that we just talked about, explaining more about them, the letter Hey, the Mazal also, which is the constellation that's related to it, in this case Aries, the lamb, the tribe is Judah, sense is speech, like we said, and there's more of these correspondences and parallels that can be explored. So I hope this has given you a little bit of a taste of the complexity of the system of the encampment around the tabernacle.